Friday practice at Imola is over, and the fastest driver of the day was Oscar Piastri, as it was a McLaren 1-2. But what did we learn? Well, in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at the data and doing a data analysis from Friday practice. If you enjoyed the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. But now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, Friday practice is over at Imola, and as usual, with Imola being an old school circuit, we saw quite a lot of drivers making a trip through the gravel trap, and in FP1, we saw a crash from Gabriel Bortoleto, which brought out the red flags, ending FP1 early. And then in FP2, we saw Isack Hadjar hit the wall as well, bringing out some more red flags towards the end of the session. In FP1, we saw the majority of running being done on that C6 compound. In FP2, we saw plenty of running on the mediums, and also some running on those C6 soft tyres. They don't look like they will be used at all in the Grand Prix, but they do look like they could be a very fast tyre in qualifying, albeit a little bit fragile. So, how did the lap times change from FP1 to FP2? Well, let's compare the fastest lap from FP1 to the fastest lap from FP2 to see how things changed. Both of these laps were set by Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, as we once again see how he has been pretty dominant, at least so far this weekend. And when you look at these two laps, you can see that there is a massive difference on the exit of the Tamburello chicane, which is turns 2 and 3. On the exit, Piastri gets a great exit in FP2 compared to FP1 and immediately gains 0.3 of a second. He continues to gain that advantage all the way through the Villeneuve chicane as well. The next area where Piastri gains a bunch of time in FP2 against FP1 is at turn 9, also known as the Piratella. Through Piratella, Piastri carried 15 km/h more speed in FP2, as he got a lot more grip, as the circuit is much faster and much more cleaned up. The final area where Piastri gained a lot of time in FP2 is just before heading into the two Ravazza corners. I have a feeling this is just down to using more deployment in FP2 compared to FP1, but it does show how the teams turn things up between the two practice sessions. Overall, between the two laps, there is a difference of 1.25 seconds. So we've seen how the times changed between the two sessions, but now let's take a look at the top speeds that each team was able to reach today. And the question is, who is looking fast and who is looking pretty slow in a straight line? Well, when you look at these top speeds, something that is surprising is that Alpine was the fastest car in a straight line today, potentially indicating that they are running with slightly less downforce than their rivals. Either that, or they may have had things turned up a little bit with Flavio Briatore's first race as team principal, and he does want to make them look good. When it comes to the top teams, something rather surprising is that for once, it was not McLaren who were the slowest cars in a straight line, and instead, that belonged to Mercedes. McLaren have brought a spoon-shaped rear wing this weekend, and I wonder if that has offered them the downforce that they want, but with some of the less drag that sometimes comes with that downforce. That being said, they're still not the fastest car in a straight line, as that honour for the front teams belongs to Red Bull, who hit 331 km/h. It will be interesting to see how this changes going into qualifying. In the midfield then, let's talk about Alpine and Williams, because in FP1 and FP2, we saw some great runs by both of these teams. In FP1, Williams were the third fastest car, with Carlos Sainz in P3, putting in a fantastic performance. And then in FP2, it was Pierre Gasly in P3, and both teams are looking like they are fighting for the top midfield spot this weekend. But the question is, who is looking stronger when it comes to the longer runs? Well, let's compare the race runs of Gasly and Sainz from FP2. And when you look at these longer runs, firstly, apologies, the colours are very similar, but it does show that overall, Carlos Sainz and Williams are looking a little bit faster, which would make sense based on what we have seen so far this season. It is just a question though as to whether or not the Williams can qualify high enough to make use of their overall race speed advantage. I just want to say, if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Ferrari. For Ferrari then, Imola was a very tricky Friday, as both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton are looking really uncomfortable in the car. We saw plenty of trips through the gravel for both drivers, and we also saw both drivers complaining about the brakes, as the Ferrari car is not slowing down how they would like, and this leaves Ferrari with a lot of work to do overnight. Leclerc did put an okay lap in for 6th place, but teammate Lewis Hamilton was down in 11th place. Let's compare then the fastest lap of the two to see where Hamilton is losing out to his teammate. And when you look at these laps, you can really see how both drivers are struggling when it comes to the brakes. Through Tamburello, Hamilton is actually the stronger driver of the two compared to Leclerc, and he gains a couple of tenths. But then going into Tosa, Leclerc is stronger on the brakes and gains over 0.3 of a second over Lewis Hamilton. They are both struggling on the brakes, but at different spots on the track. It is not like either driver is gaining or losing consistently in high speed corners, but instead it is at each braking point, and it's not consistent. Hamilton did at least gain some time back in the last couple of corners, but it was not enough. And unless Hamilton can find something overnight, then he might find himself being eliminated in Q2. For Red Bull then, today they have brought some upgrades to try and close the gap to the McLaren cars, and well, it looks like there is still some work to do, as Verstappen was 5th fastest and Yuki Tsunoda was 8th fastest. For Red Bull, they split the upgrades on the cars to try and compare to see if the upgrades are working or not, but they are still lacking compared to McLaren. Let's compare the long runs of Verstappen and compare it to Oscar Piastri, so we can see how they are lacking when it comes to race runs. And when you look at this, it is fairly clear that at least right now, McLaren has a pretty big advantage over Red Bull. Like we saw in Miami, Verstappen might close up come qualifying, but the McLaren in race trim is on another planet, and they look like that once again they will just pull away when it comes to the race, provided that they can at least out-qualify Max Verstappen. For Mercedes then, it was a fairly decent day for George Russell, as he was the 4th fastest driver of the day, but teammate Kimi Antonelli couldn't get his lap together when it came to the soft tyres, and he found himself down in 18th place. It took Kimi a couple of attempts to get that fastest lap, but as we have seen so far this weekend, the C6 tyre really cannot hold up over a couple of laps, and you can see that when you compare their fastest laps, that by the time Antonelli does set a lap, the tyres are way past their best, and we see, especially at Piratella, also known as turn 9, he cannot carry anywhere near the same amount of speed as George Russell, indicating that the tyres are indeed past their best. I expect that Antonelli will look over the data and come back on Saturday and close the gap back up. As for George Russell, he is looking pretty strong at the moment, and he might very well be best of the rest behind McLaren. Finally, for McLaren then, it was a pretty straightforward day once again, as we've seen so many times this season, as it was a 1-2 for the duo. And honestly, in race trim, the team looks like they are well ahead of the rest. It is just a matter of if they can put it all together for qualifying. If they can, then it should be a pretty straightforward weekend for them. Let's compare then the fastest laps of Norris and Piastri. And when you look at these two laps, Piastri really should be even further ahead of teammate Norris, because for the majority of the lap, it is all advantage Oscar. It is until of course he gets to the last two Ravazza corners at the end of the lap, because Norris gets a much stronger run on the exit of Ravazza 1 and gains over a tenth over Piastri and almost beats him to the line. In qualifying, neither McLaren driver can afford to make a mistake, otherwise it could be game over for them. Of course, as we see with Imola, grass and gravel does outline the outside of the circuit, so any mistakes will be punished. So with that in mind then, what are my top 5 predictions for qualifying for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola? Well, in P5 I'm going to go for Kimi Antonelli, as I do think he will recover and put a lap together when it comes to qualifying. In P4 it will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, P3 will be George Russell in the Mercedes, P2 will be Lando Norris, and I'm still going to go for Oscar Piastri to put the car on pole position. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.